Have you ever been labeled unstable when you were the only one telling the truth? At San Diego International, a rookie nurse named Lena Ward stands at gate 17 in coffee-stained scrubs, a neck brace biting into her skin, her wrist wrapped like a warning. Behind her, the hospital CEO whispers the title of her new life like a sentence: "You're not a nurse anymore. You're a patient." Once you board that plane, you vanish. Crowds rush past with ordinary problems, and that's the horror of it. Evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it wears a perfect suit and a reassuring smile. Then Lena makes one tiny secret signal she learned in Afghanistan. A Navy SEAL commander freezes mid-step, and the CEO turns white. Stay with me. By the end, you'll know exactly how power silences people and how one move can break the trap. If you're watching, hit like and comment where you're tuning in from. That single motion of Lena Ward's fingers at gate 17 did not come from drama or impulse. It came from habit, from the kind of habit the body keeps when the mind is too tired to explain itself. 72 hours earlier, Harbor Line Medical Center was bright and busy and ordinary in the way hospitals pretend to be, all polished floors and laminated posters about compassion, all smiling faces that never quite reach the eyes. Lena had started there with the usual hopes. Do good work. Keep your head down. Pay off your loans. Learn the rhythms. She told herself the job would be hard in the normal ways: long shifts, short staffing, families who needed answers no one had time to give. She did not expect the hospital itself to feel like a living thing that could decide to swallow her. Her first week on the med-surg floor, she learned the difference between noise and signal. The unit had noise in abundance: call lights chiming, pumps alarming, overhead pages that turned names into urgency, residents moving fast with coffee breath and frayed nerves, nurses laughing too loudly at jokes that were not funny because laughter was cheaper than breaking. Lena moved through it with the quiet focus she had once used in places where the wrong sound meant incoming fire. She was careful, competent, quick with her hands. Patients liked her because she looked at them when they spoke, even when she was charting. Her charge nurse, Marcy Keene, watched her with a wary respect, the way you watch someone who does not complain even when everyone else is drowning. The first thing Lena noticed was the medication count. In the med room, the controlled substances cabinet sat like a confessional. It had its own rules, its own rituals, its own silent judgment. At the end of her shift, Lena counted vials with another nurse the way the policy required. Morphine, fentanyl, hydromorphone. A few empty waste syringes sealed in a bin. The numbers on the screen were supposed to match what their eyes saw and what their hands touched. That night, they did not. Lena double-checked, then checked again, then felt that familiar pressure at the base of her skull, the one that arrived when something was wrong, and everyone around her kept acting like it was fine. She asked Marcy quietly, keeping her voice low so the unit would not hear her worry. Marcy's answer was too fast. "It happens," Marcy said. "The system lags. Pharmacy fixes it." Lena stared at the count sheet. The system does not lag on narcotics, she thought. The system lags on printer queues and meal trays and stale tickets. It does not lag on the drugs that can stop a heart. She wrote a note in the variance log, small and precise, and told herself she was being new, being cautious, being the annoying nurse who cared too much. She tried to let it go. Then it happened again. 2 nights later, Lena was assigned to a patient named Gerald Wynn, mid-60s pneumonia, complicated by heart failure. He was tired in the way older men get tired when their bodies have carried too much for too long. He clutched his blanket when he spoke, as if even words might slip away. Lena noticed his oxygen saturation dipping each time he drifted to sleep. The respiratory therapist adjusted settings. The resident ordered a chest film. Nothing felt stable. Around midnight, Lena stepped to the computer to review his meds. A discharge order had appeared in his chart, signed under an account name she did not recognize, stamped at 11:47 p.m. The plan was for morning. which would have been questionable even if he were improving. He was not. She found the resident, a young doctor named Patel, and asked him if he had placed the order. He looked at the screen and frowned as if someone had rearranged his furniture while he was gone. "I did not do that," he said. "That is not my signature." They walked to the charge desk together. Marcy glanced at the chart and pressed her lips together. "Bed management," she said, like the words were a warning and a password. "The hospital needs the bed." The resident's jaw tightened. He started to argue. Marcy leaned closer and lowered her voice until it became a hiss only they could hear. "You want to fight administration at 2 in the morning?" "Go ahead," she said. "I'm not writing that incident report. I have kids." Patel looked like he wanted to keep pushing, then his eyes flicked toward the glass walls of the unit office where the nurse manager's light was still on. He stepped back as if the air itself had changed. He swallowed the anger and went quiet. Lena walked into Wynn's room and saw the patient's daughter asleep in the chair, her chin tucked to her chest, her hands wrapped around a phone that had probably been glowing with worry for hours. Lena adjusted Wynn's blanket and watched his breathing. He opened his eyes, unfocused. "Am I going home?" he whispered. "Not tonight," Lena said gently. "Not yet." She charted carefully. She documented vitals and assessments and the fact that the discharge order appeared without the care team's approval. She wrote it the way she wrote everything, clear and specific because specifics were harder to erase. That was when she started seeing patterns. Certain discharges moved fast. Certain orders appeared at odd hours. Certain medication discrepancies always seemed to resolve themselves after pharmacy reviewed, which meant they vanished from the record as if the record had never been wrong in the first place. And the staff, good people who cared, kept their heads down. They looked away with tired eyes that said they had tried once, maybe twice, and it had cost them. On her next shift, Lena was sent to float to the step-down unit. The place hummed with controlled intensity cardiac monitors blinking like tiny neon warnings. There, she met a respiratory therapist named Jonah, who worked fast and talked in short bursts. While they stood at the med cart outside a room, Jonah nodded toward a clipboard posted near the charge desk. "See that," he said. Lena followed his eyes. It was a list of patient names marked with color-coded stickers. Green for discharge, yellow for evaluate, red for hold. A few names had black stars beside them. "What are the stars?" Lena asked. Jonah's mouth tightened. "VIP metrics," he said. Then he looked away, as if he had said too much. He pushed his cart down the hall and left her standing with the question hanging in the air like antiseptic. Lena watched a nurse tap a keyboard, then glance at the list, then glance toward the unit office. The nurse's shoulders rose and fell with a breath that looked like resignation. That night, Lena stayed late after her shift ended. She told herself she was finishing charting, that she was being responsible. When the unit quieted, she moved to an empty workstation and pulled up medication administration records, then compared them to cabinet access logs, then compared those to shift staffing. She did it the way she once mapped routes and radio calls, building a picture out of small, unglamorous details. A patient received a dose that no one charted giving. A vial was removed under an attending physician's credentials at a time the physician was in surgery. A waste record was filed without a witness. Lena's pulse stayed steady as she worked. Her mind went colder and more focused the deeper she looked. She took photos of the screen with her phone, careful to crop names when she could, though not always. She captured timestamps and user IDs and numbers because numbers did not care who you were. Numbers either matched or they did not. She did not tell anyone yet. She did not call a hotline. She did not send an email. She remembered how quickly systems protected themselves. Instead, she created a folder on her phone and titled it innocently Shift Notes. She also sent a copy of the folder to an encrypted storage app she still used out of old habit, the kind of habit you build when you learn that evidence is only useful if it survives you. She told herself she was being paranoid. She also told herself paranoia had kept her alive before. The next morning, a hospital-wide email went out about safety culture and transparency. It included a smiling photo of the CEO, Graham Wexler, standing beside children with balloons at a charity event. The email talked about trust and integrity in a voice that felt rehearsed. Lena read it at the nurse's station and felt her stomach turn. The words were too clean. The image was too curated. She looked up and saw Wexler in person for the first time moving down the hall with an entourage of administrators. He was taller than she expected, with hair that looked like it had never been touched by humidity. He shook hands. He laughed at jokes. He placed a palm on a patient's shoulder for exactly 2 seconds, long enough for a camera to catch it, short enough to keep control. His eyes passed over the nurses like they were furniture. Lena went back to her patients. She changed dressings. She gave meds. She held a trembling hand while a woman asked if she was dying. She did her job with care because caring was the only part of the hospital that still felt real. Then, late in the afternoon, she was summoned to a meeting. The room was small, windowless, and cold enough to make her skin tighten. Human Resources sat across the table, a woman named Dana Whitcomb, with perfect nails and a voice that could make threat sound like concern. Beside her sat the nurse manager, looking down at her own hands. A folder lay on the table with Lena's name printed on the tab. "We have received reports," Dana began, "that you have been acting erratically on shift." Lena blinked once. "Erratically how?" "Concerns about your emotional stability," Dana said. "Concerns that you may be under unusual stress." Lena felt heat rise in her chest. She kept her voice calm. "I raised a medication discrepancy," she said. "I asked about an unauthorized discharge order." "That is not emotional instability. That is patient safety." Dana's smile did not move. "We take patient safety very seriously," she said. "That is why we are recommending a brief leave and an evaluation to ensure you are fit for duty." Lena looked at her nurse manager. Marcy's eyes flicked up then away. The silence said everything. Lena leaned forward. "I want to file an incident report," she said. "I want compliance involved." Dana opened the folder. Inside were printed screenshots of Lena's charting, highlighted as if someone had been searching for anything that could be framed as a mistake. Dana slid one page across the table. "You documented a discharge order appeared without approval," she said. "You accused staff of wrongdoing in the medical record." "I documented what I saw," Lena replied. Dana's tone remained gentle. "You also accessed records outside your assignment," Dana said, turning another page. "That is a violation." Lena's mouth went dry. She realized they had been watching her. Not the patients, not the systems, her. She felt that old instinct again, the one that told her a trap was closing. She stood slowly. "If you want to suspend me, she said. "But you will not call me unstable because I noticed people getting hurt." The nurse manager finally looked up. "Sit down, Lena," she said. "Please." Lena did not sit. She walked out. 2 hours later, her badge stopped working. At the entrance to the unit, a security guard stepped in front of her, polite but firm. "Ms. Ward," he said, "we have been instructed to escort you to employee health." Lena stared at him. On what authority? He glanced past her, uncomfortable. "Administration," he said. Employee health was another windowless room. A nurse she did not know took her blood pressure and asked questions that sounded like they belonged to a different story. "Do you feel like harming yourself? Do you feel paranoid? Are you hearing voices?" Lena answered steadily, "No, no, no," and watched the nurse's face. The nurse avoided eye contact. She spoke as if reading from a script. When Lena asked to see the form, the nurse hesitated, then said she could not provide it. Afterward, Lena walked out into the late afternoon sun and felt the world tilt slightly, not from dizziness, but from disbelief. Harbor Line had always looked like a place meant to heal, glass walls reflecting the ocean light, banners about hope. Now it felt like a machine with a smiling mask. She headed for the parking garage with her bag slung over one shoulder. Her phone felt heavier than usual in her pocket. The garage was dim concrete walls swallowing sound. Lena's footsteps echoed, and she immediately slowed, scanning the corners the way she once scanned alleyways. She hated that her body still knew how to do that. She hated that it was useful. A door clicked behind her. She stopped. Footsteps approached, measured and confident. Wexler's voice came from the shadows, smooth and amused. "You are making this messy, Lena." She turned. He stepped into the light in his suit, immaculate, unbothered. He looked like he belonged in an office, not a garage. That was what made him terrifying. He could drag his control anywhere. "I am not making anything messy," Lena said. "I reported concerns. That is all." Wexler smiled as if she were a child misunderstanding a game. "You took records," he said. "You documented things you had no authorization to document. You think that makes you brave. It makes you a liability." Lena's heart beat hard but steady. She kept her voice low. "Patients are being discharged early," she said. "Medications are disappearing. Someone is changing logs. If you are not involved, then you should be the first person who wants it investigated." Wexler's eyes stayed calm. His voice sharpened. "You do not understand how hospitals work," he said. "We have contracts, we have metrics, we have obligations. You are not going to sabotage that because you want to feel righteous." "Righteous," Lena repeated, tasting the word. "This is not about me." Wexler stepped closer. Too close. Lena's body tensed, ready even as her mind begged her not to return to that old readiness. He tilted his head as if listening to her breathing. "Give me the phone," he said. Lena's throat tightened. "No." Wexler's smile vanished. For the first time, she saw the anger underneath the polish, the entitlement that believed it had the right to take whatever it wanted. He moved fast. One hand shot out and grabbed her wrist. Pain flared sharp and immediate. Lena twisted instinctively, trying to break the grip, but Wexler drove her backward with surprising force. Her shoulder slammed into a concrete pillar. Her neck snapped sideways and a white flash of pain cut through her vision. She bit down hard to keep from crying out. Wexler leaned in his face, inches from hers. His voice dropped into something intimate and cruel. "You are nothing," he whispered. "I can make you disappear, and no one will even ask where you went." Lena tasted blood. She forced her eyes to focus. "I already sent it," she lied, because lying was sometimes the only way to buy time. Wexler's grip tightened. His fingers dug into her wrist until pain became a throb. "You did not send anything," he said. "People like you do not have people." Lena's vision swam. She did not know if the dizziness was from the impact or the rage. Wexler released her abruptly, as if she had become dirty to touch. He straightened his suit jacket. Then he smiled again, the same charity smile from the email, the one that could convince a room full of donors that he was a saint. "You are going to take a leave," he said. "You are going to get help. You are going to board a plane tonight. And you are going to forget you ever worked here." Lena clutched her wrist to her chest. She forced air into her lungs. "Why tonight?" she managed. "Because I am generous," Wexler said, and turned away. Lena stood there shaking in the dim garage, the concrete cold against her back. When she looked down, she saw her wrist already swelling, bruising, blooming under the skin. She pressed her fingers to her neck and felt the sharp ache that made swallowing hurt. She pulled her phone out with her good hand and opened the folder. The photos were still there. The audio recorder app was still there. She started recording without thinking, capturing the emptiness of the garage, her own ragged breathing, the distant sound of a car passing on the street outside, because she needed something that proved the moment was real. She limped to her car, then sat behind the wheel without turning the key. Her hands trembled. She opened the encrypted storage app and watched the upload bar crawl forward. When it finished, she exhaled slowly. Not relief, not yet just a fraction less fear. By the time she drove home, a message waited in her inbox from Human Resources. Termination effective immediately. Unprofessional conduct. unauthorized access, fitness for duty concerns. There was an attachment labeled Travel Itinerary and a note that read, "Transportation has been arranged to assist you with your departure." Departure. Like she was cargo. Lena stared at the screen until the words blurred. She had seen evacuation orders before. She had seen the way powerful people moved bodies from one place to another and called it procedure. She dropped her phone onto the couch and sat on the edge of the coffee table, breathing shallowly because every deep breath tugged at her neck. She thought about Gerald Wynne and his daughter asleep in the chair. She thought about the black stars on the discharge list. She thought about Jonah's tight mouth when he said VIP metrics. She thought about Marcy afraid for her kids. She thought about all the staff who had learned that survival meant silence. A knock came at her door around dusk. When she opened it, a private transport driver stood there holding a clipboard, eyes blank. "Miss Ward," he said, "I am here to take you to the airport." Lena looked past him at the car idling at the curb. The neighborhood was quiet. The sky was turning the color of bruised steel. She considered refusing. She considered calling the police. Then she pictured Wexler's smile and the way security had already escorted her like she was a problem to be contained. She pictured Dana's gentle voice calling her unstable. She pictured how easy it would be for them to place her on a hold, to take her phone, to label her a danger. She stepped back inside and grabbed her bag. She put on her scrubs because she had nothing else clean, and because part of her still needed armor, even if it was thin cotton and a name badge that no longer worked. At the urgent care, the doctor barely looked at her. He wrapped her wrist, pressed a foam brace around her neck, asked if she felt safe at home. Lena said yes because she did not have the energy to explain what safety meant anymore. She walked out with discharge papers that read, "Strain sprain, follow up with primary care." The irony landed like a punch. The driver brought her to San Diego International and dropped her at the curb without a word. Inside, the airport lights were too bright, the air too cold. People rolled suitcases and argued about boarding groups living inside ordinary worries. Lena stood for a moment among them and felt invisible, which would have been comforting if she did not know invisibility was exactly what Wexler wanted. She moved through security with her bag and her brace and her swollen wrist trying to keep her face neutral. Her phone was tucked deep, the screen dark, the evidence heavy in her pocket. She followed signs toward her gate, each step a choice that did not feel like a choice at all. When she reached gate 17, she saw the boarding door and the rows of seats and the windows streaked with approaching storm. She also saw Graham Wexler standing there as if he belonged in the terminal the way he belonged everywhere, calm, composed, waiting. He stepped in behind her until his breath warmed her ear. "You are not a nurse anymore," he whispered. "You are not a nurse anymore." He whispered the words, sliding into her ear like a verdict. "You are a patient. Once you board that plane, you vanish." Lena kept her eyes on the boarding door. The glass at the end of the terminal trembled with wind as the storm pressed closer, a gray sheet rolling over the runway lights. Around her, travelers lived inside smaller emergencies. A toddler fussed over a dropped snack. A man argued softly into a phone about a missed connection. A couple laughed at something on a screen, the sound too bright for the cold air. Normal life moved past her like she was a post they had already learned to step around. Wexler stepped back just enough to be seen, but not enough to release control. He wanted witnesses. He wanted an audience. He wanted the story to begin with him looking calm and her looking broken. He lifted a hand toward an airport security officer stationed near the gate, a man in a dark uniform with an earpiece and a tired face. Wexler approached with that practiced boardroom smile, the one that promised competence and safety. "Officer," he said, keeping his tone warm, "I apologize for the inconvenience. This employee has been having a psychiatric episode. We have been trying to get her help. She has become violent with staff and she is refusing care." The officer's gaze slid from Wexler's immaculate suit to Lena's foam brace and bandaged wrist. It paused on the bruise blooming along her forearm, the purpling edges that looked too clean to be accidental and too ugly to be anything else. The officer's mouth tightened. Mammy said to Lena, "Is that true?" Lena felt Wexler's eyes on her. She felt the weight of his certainty, the certainty that he could frame any sentence she spoke. She heard Marcy's warning in her head, the one no one had said out loud, but everyone had taught her anyway. Talk too much, and you become the problem. Her throat ached. Her neck brace pinched. She tasted the bitter memory of concrete and blood. She said nothing. Wexler made a small sympathetic sound like he was grieving the inconvenience of her existence. "You see," he said gently, "she is disoriented. We just need to make sure she gets on her flight and continues treatment." The officer shifted, uncertain. He leaned toward Lena as if to lower the temperature of the moment. "Ma'am, I need to ask you directly. Are you traveling voluntarily?" Lena stared at the boarding pass in her hand, the paper creased where her fingers had crushed it. Voluntarily. The word felt ridiculous. She could hear Wexler behind her breathing evenly, waiting. She did not look at Wexler. Instead, her eyes drifted toward the windows. That was where the man in camouflage stood. He had not moved since she noticed him. Tall, still shoulders squared, as if the air itself had to respect him. His silver-threaded hair was cut close. A short beard framed a jaw set in permanent restraint. He held a folded newspaper in one hand, but he was not reading it. He was watching the storm like it was a briefing. Lena did not know his name then. She only knew what he was. She knew it in the way you know a familiar language when someone speaks it without thinking. She let her gaze fall away again, careful not to make it obvious. She lowered her hand by her thigh as if adjusting the hem of her scrubs. Her fingers moved once. Small, precise, silent. It was not a gesture civilians noticed. It was not a signal you learned in a classroom. It was the kind you learned when you could not speak and still needed to live. The man's newspaper stopped mid-fold. He did not turn his head. He did not glance at her. He did not perform recognition for anyone watching. His body simply changed. A tightening through the shoulders, a stillness that sharpened into purpose. He folded the paper slower than necessary, deliberate as a door locking. Wexler was still talking, still painting Lena as unstable, still smiling for the officer like a man confident in the narrative. Then his eyes flicked past the officer toward the windows, and his smile did something strange. It held for half a second too long, then faltered like a mask slipping on sweat, because the man in camouflage had started walking. He moved through the terminal with an economy that made the crowd part without understanding why. He did not shove. He did not hurry. People simply stepped aside, as if their bodies felt his intent before their minds could name it. Wexler noticed them stepping away. He noticed the shifting space. He noticed the sudden lack of noise around that moving point. He turned fully. His expression stayed polite, but Lena saw panic form at the edges of it the way ice forms at the rim of a glass. Sir Wexler called, raising his voice just enough to seem friendly. "Excuse me, sir." The man in camouflage reached them and stopped close enough that Lena could see the faint scarring near one knuckle, the kind of scar you earn from work that does not come with applause. His eyes were pale and tired and alert, taking in the scene the way a medic takes in a wound. Wexler stepped forward with his hand extended, trying to pull the interaction back into his preferred world. Corporate introductions. Charm. Control. "I am Graham Wexler, CEO of Harborline Medical Center," he said. "I just wanted to thank you for your service. We are handling a situation with one of our former employees." The man did not take his hand. He raised one palm, not aggressive, simply final. Wexler stopped mid-motion like a dog hearing a command it could not disobey. The man's gaze flicked to Lena. It landed on her neck brace, her wrist, the bruising on her forearm, the way she held herself rigid, balanced as if preparing for impact. Then his eyes returned to Wexler. "Step away from her," he said. His voice was low. There was no heat in it. That made it worse. Wexler let out a small laugh, too polished to be real. "Sir, I think there is a misunderstanding. She is unwell. She has been making delusional accusations, she stole confidential records, and she needs care. The man in camouflage did not blink. Step away, he repeated. The airport officer shifted, suddenly aware that this was no longer a simple dispute. Another security supervisor began walking over, drawn by the change in tone. Lena saw the supervisor's hand hover near his radio. Wexler's smile tightened. "Sir, he said I understand your concern, but she is my employee." "Not anymore," the man replied. Wexler's eyes flashed. "That is not your jurisdiction." The man finally turned his head slightly, just enough for the overhead lights to catch the name tape on his chest. Mercer. Under it, a smaller patch that meant something even if it was not spelled out. "Commander Nolan Mercer," he said, and his title landed without emphasis, as if it was simply a fact. "Step away from her." Wexler's breath caught. Lena saw him calculate. She watched him try to decide whether this was theater he could still control. Wexler lifted both hands, palms out, performing innocence. "Of course. I do not want conflict. I only want to ensure she gets help." Mercer leaned a fraction closer to Lena, not touching her but shifting his body so he stood between her and Wexler without making a show of it. It was a move Lena recognized. A subtle cover. A barrier that looked casual to civilians and absolute to anyone trained. "Ma'am," Mercer said, his voice angled toward her. "Now, did you signal me because you are in immediate danger, or because you are being forced onto that plane against your will?" Lena swallowed. The officer beside them listened closely. Wexler's gaze burned into her. Lena felt the old instinct to protect herself by minimizing, by making the moment smaller so it could not break her. She forced that instinct down. "Both," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. Something in Mercer's expression tightened. Not sympathy, not surprise. Confirmation. Wexler stepped forward quickly, his composure cracking into irritation. "This is ridiculous," he snapped, turning to the airport officer. "She is manipulating you. She is unstable. She assaulted staff. She is dangerous." The airport officer raised his hand slightly, trying to slow the scene. "Sir, I need everyone to calm down. Ma'am, do you have documentation? Do you have a complaint filed? Do you have anything that explains why you are saying this?" Wexler cut in smoothly, regaining his polished tone. "We do. We have an internal report. We have HR documentation. We have a signed evaluation referral. We can provide all of it." Lena could see it in the officer's eyes, the way the suit and the confident voice pulled him toward believing Wexler. It was the same gravity she had felt in the hospital, the way institutions leaned toward the person who sounded like they belonged. Mercer did not argue with the officer. He did not debate Wexler. He simply watched Wexler the way you watch someone whose hands you do not trust. "That is exactly what they said about the last nurse who tried to report you," Mercer said quietly. Wexler's face twitched. A tiny crack gone almost instantly. His eyes sharpened, and for the first time his voice lost its warmth. "You have no idea what you are talking about," he said. Mercer's gaze stayed steady. Separate him from her. Mercer told the airport supervisor who had arrived. "Now." The supervisor hesitated, looking between Mercer and Wexler. "Sir," he began. Mercer turned his head just enough for the supervisor to see his eyes clearly. There was no threat in them. There was authority practiced and controlled. "Now," Mercer repeated. Airport police moved in 2 officers in dark uniforms with calm faces. They positioned themselves between Wexler and Lena with a professionalism that did not need force to feel firm. Wexler's smile returned in a hurry, too wide, too bright. "Gentlemen," he said, "this is an unfortunate misunderstanding. I am willing to cooperate. I just want her to get care." One of the officers spoke into his radio. "Gate 17. Possible domestic disturbance requesting supervisor and medical assistance." "Domestic?" Lena almost laughed. She held the sound inside her chest like a stone. The overhead speaker crackled. "Attention passengers at Gate 17. Please remain in the immediate area." People turned their heads. A few raised phones. Some pretended not to notice and stared harder at their screens. A mother tugged her child closer. The gate agent stood frozen behind the counter, eyes flicking to her computer as if she could hide behind boarding groups. Wexler watched the crowd, and Lena saw him adjust again, shaping himself to the new audience. He spoke louder now, so nearby passengers could hear. "She has been under significant stress," he said. "We have been trying to help her. We are concerned she may hurt herself or others. I am only doing what is responsible." Lena felt her heart thudding in her throat. The lies were familiar. They were designed to make her look dangerous and him look burdened. Mercer did not raise his voice to counter him. He leaned slightly toward the airport officer. "I need a secure room," Mercer said. "No cameras. And I need a federal liaison on site." The airport officer blinked. "Federal." The supervisor's hand went to his radio and his voice lowered. "Dispatch, we need a private interview room, no recording devices. Notify airport police sergeant." He glanced at Mercer again. "Sir, who is your contact?" Mercer gave a name Lena did not recognize. The supervisor repeated it into the radio. Wexler's eyes narrowed. He stepped forward, and one of the airport police officers shifted to block him. Wexler's smile slipped. "This is absurd," he said. "You cannot detain me. I have meetings. I have counsel. Call your counsel," Mercer replied. "Tell him to bring identification." Wexler's nostrils flared. He turned his head slightly toward Lena, just enough that his mouth was shielded from the crowd. "You are making this worse," he murmured, the sweetness gone. "You do not know what you are doing." Lena stared back at him. She did not answer. She let him see the thing he hated most, that she was still standing. A sharp chirp burst from a radio near the gate desk. The gate agent flinched. The airport supervisor leaned in to listen, then his face changed. He looked at Mercer, then at Wexler. "Sir, the supervisor said we just received a call request from NCIS." The acronym hit the air like a sudden temperature drop. A few nearby passengers did not understand it. Wexler did. Lena saw the exact moment his body betrayed him. His shoulders tightened, his jaw clenched. His eyes moved quick and searching, scanning exits, scanning cameras, scanning the people watching. Wexler's polished laugh came out brittle. "NCIS," he repeated, as if tasting the word could turn it into a joke. "That is impossible. This is a hospital matter." Mercer's eyes remained calm. "It is not," he said. The airport officer stepped closer to Lena, his voice gentler now. "Ma'am, for your safety, we are going to move you to a private room. Do you need medical attention?" Lena touched the edge of her neck brace. She could feel her pulse beneath it. "I am fine," she said, and heard how thin the lie sounded. She corrected it. "I can walk." Mercer shifted with her, matching her movement, so she did not have to step past Wexler. The officers guided Wexler in the opposite direction, not dragging him, simply controlling space. Wexler resisted with posture, not force. He lifted his chin, trying to reclaim authority through arrogance. "This is outrageous," Wexler said loudly. "She stole confidential medical records. She is violating federal privacy laws. She is dangerous." Heads turned. A man in a ball cap muttered something to his wife. A teenager recorded openly now. The gate agent's hands trembled as she typed. Lena's phone felt like it was burning through her pocket. Mercer glanced at her, once brief assessing. His gaze flicked toward her pocket, then back to her face. He did not ask yet. He did not rush her. He kept walking. The corridor they entered was quieter away from the gates, lined with gray carpet and emergency exit signs. The airport noise softened into a distant roar. Lena's boots sounded too loud in the smaller space, each step a reminder that she was still in her body, still injured, still real. Wexler's voice echoed from behind them, sharp with irritation. "You cannot keep me here. I am a respected executive. I will have your jobs." One of the airport police officers said something low to him that Lena could not hear. Wexler's response rose again, then faded as they turned a corner. Lena focused on breathing. The neck brace made swallowing hurt. Her wrist throbbed with each pulse. Her mind tried to split into compartments, one that watched the environment, one that managed pain, one that kept emotion caged so it would not spill out in front of strangers. She had done this before. Not in an airport. Not in scrubs. But the skill was the same. Survive the moment. Control your face. Keep moving. They reached a door marked Authorized Personnel Only. The airport supervisor swiped a card. The lock clicked. Inside was a small room with beige walls, a scarred table, and 2 chairs. A cheap clock ticked loudly. The air smelled like old paper and cleaning solution. No cameras, the supervisor said, glancing at Mercer as if to confirm. This room is not monitored. The only recording is what we document in writing. Mercer nodded once. Good. The supervisor turned to Lena. Ma'am, would you like water? Lena's mouth was dry. Yes, she said. The supervisor left, and the door shut softly. For a second, it was just Lena and Mercer. The silence did not feel empty. It felt controlled. Mercer stood near the door, angled so he could see the hallway through the small window. He did not pace. He did not fidget. He simply waited, as if waiting was part of the job. Lena watched him. His presence had shifted everything outside, and she still did not understand why. Her chest felt tight with questions she did not dare throw all at once. Mercer finally looked at her fully, his eyes moving over her injuries again with clinical precision. Who did that to you? He asked. Lena's throat worked. She could have said she fell. She could have said it was nothing. She felt the weight of every time someone had told her to keep the peace. Wexler, she said. Mercer's jaw tightened, subtle but real. He held her gaze. You have proof, he said, not a question. Lena hesitated. Her hand drifted toward her pocket. Her phone was there, heavy with everything she had collected, everything Wexler wanted to erase. She thought about the gate, the crowd, the way Wexler had tried to shape the story. She thought about the way Mercer had stopped the story from closing over her. Yes, she said. The door opened, and the supervisor returned with a paper cup of water. He set it down, then stepped back out. 2 airport police officers stood in the hall, visible through the window, their posture casual but deliberate. Mercer did not touch the water. He watched Lena take a sip, watched her swallow carefully through the discomfort of the brace. Then Mercer spoke again, quieter now. Ma'am, he said, I am going to ask you a direct question. Are you willing to hand over what you have right now? Lena set the cup down. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. The screen was smudged. The case was scratched. It looked ordinary. It did not look like the thing that had dragged her into a terminal with a one-way ticket and a man whispering about disappearing. She held it for a moment without letting go. Mercer watched her hands, then met her eyes. Whatever you have, he said, it needs to be secured properly. Lena nodded once. She unlocked the phone, and the screen lit her face in the beige room. She opened the folder labeled Shift Notes. Rows of images appeared, tiny rectangles of proof. She scrolled through them, feeling her pulse in her fingertips. Mercer pulled the second chair back slowly and sat, not dominating the space, simply making room for what came next. Lena slid the phone across the table to him. Lena slid the phone across the scarred table, and for a moment it looked like nothing more than a cheap rectangle of glass and plastic. Commander Mercer did not reach for it immediately. He let it sit there between them like a live round, as if the wrong touch could detonate the room. When he finally picked it up, he did it with the same careful calm Lena had seen in trauma bays when a surgeon lifted a piece of shrapnel from the tissue. His eyes moved over the screen with quick precision. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Lena watched his hands more than his face. She had learned long ago that hands told the truth first. Mercer scrolled through the folder she had built in silence. Photos of medication administration records close enough to show timestamps and user IDs. Screenshots of discharge orders appearing at hours when the attending was documented elsewhere. A cabinet access log that showed a controlled substance removed under a credential that did not match the staff on the floor. And then the audio file, the one that made Lena's throat tighten just seeing the icon. Mercer stopped on a photograph and held it there, reading the details the way a marksman reads distance. "Who else has this?" he asked. Lena's mouth was dry again. She forced the words out carefully. "I uploaded a copy to secure storage," she said. "Not through the hospital network." Mercer's gaze lifted to her. "Good." The word landed without warmth, but it was not cold either. It sounded like relief pressed flat, like approval he refused to dramatize. He continued scrolling, then paused on the discharge order Lena had flagged the night Gerald Wynne was struggling to breathe. Mercer's eyes narrowed slightly. He zoomed in on the signature block, then out again, then tapped the timestamp. This order was placed when he asked. "Almost midnight," Lena said. He was not stable. The resident did not place it. Mercer nodded once, almost to himself, and moved to the next image. Lena felt the urge to explain everything at once, to pour out the whole last 72 hours in a rush of words so the truth could outrun the lies. But her instincts held her back. She had seen how people in power used frantic emotion as evidence of instability. She kept her voice level. She answered only what was asked. She held the rest like ammunition. Mercer stopped at an image of a narcotics variance log. The photo was slightly crooked, taken quickly, but the numbers were clear. He tapped the corner where the witness signature should have been, blank. "This is not a mistake," he said. Lena swallowed. "No." Mercer's thumb hovered, then he opened the audio file. The speaker filled with Wexler's voice, smooth at first, then sharpening into something intimate and cruel. The sound of concrete echoing. Lena's breathing captured in the background, ragged and controlled, as if she had been trying not to give him the satisfaction of hearing her break. "You are nothing," Wexler's recorded voice said. "I can make you disappear, and no one will even ask where you went." Lena stared at the table while it played. She did not want to watch Mercer's face. She did not want to see pity or disbelief or anything that would make her feel small. She listened to her own breathing on the recording and remembered the pillar digging into her shoulder, the snap of pain through her neck, the way Wexler's grip had felt practiced, not panicked. When the audio ended, Mercer did not speak for several seconds. The clock on the wall kept ticking too loud in the silence. Lena could hear movement outside the door, shoes on carpet, radios murmuring low. Mercer set the phone down carefully. "This is not just internal misconduct," he said at last. His voice stayed quiet, but something had shifted in it. "Wait. Focus." Lena's eyes lifted. Her pulse quickened. "What is it, then?" Mercer leaned back slightly, still watching the phone. "If you work long enough around operations," he said, "you start seeing patterns that look like chaos to everyone else. Missing doses, discharges that do not match patient stability, orders that appear under the wrong credentials, staff too afraid to sign their names." He paused, then met her gaze. "It looks like sloppy hospital administration." "It is not." Lena felt the room tighten around her. The brace pressed into her jaw. "Then what is it?" Mercer exhaled slowly through his nose. "Diversion," he said. "And not the kind that ends with one nurse stealing pain meds. This is organized. It is measured. It is protected." Lena's throat went tight. Protected by who? Mercer did not answer directly. Instead, he asked another question, and Lena realized he was doing what good interrogators did, building the shape of truth without forcing it into a corner too early. "Tell me about the patients who were discharged early," he said. Lena's mind moved back through the halls of Harbor Line like she was walking them again. The list with black stars, the way the charge nurse had avoided her eyes, the resident's clenched jaw. Lena spoke softly, careful with each detail. Certain names appeared on a list by the charge desk. Some were pushed out despite instability. Some were marked as VIP metrics. She did not know what that meant. She just knew it changed how fast they disappeared. Mercer listened without interruption. When she finished, he nodded as if checking boxes only he could see. He reached into a pocket and pulled out a small notebook and pen. Not a phone. not a tablet. Paper. He wrote a few words, then closed it again, the movement controlled. He glanced at the door window, then back to Lena. "You said he arranged your flight," he said. "Yes. He brought you to the airport himself?" Mercer asked. "Yes," Lena said. "He did not want me out of his sight." Mercer's eyes sharpened. "That tells me he did not trust the system to finish it without him," Mercer said. "Or he wanted to make sure there were witnesses to your breakdown." Lena felt her stomach twist. She saw it now, the way Wexler had positioned himself at the gate inches behind her, close enough to claim her air. Close enough to make it feel like she belonged to him. A sharp rap hit the door. 3 quick knocks, clean and precise. Mercer did not flinch. "Come in," he said. The door opened, and 2 men stepped into the room with the quiet confidence of people used to carrying authority without needing to display it. The first was older, haircut short, face lined by sun and stress posture rigid as if his spine had been reinforced. He wore plain clothes that still looked like a uniform. The second was younger, moving with contained energy, holding a sealed evidence bag in one hand, his eyes flicking to corners as if the room might change shape. The older man's gaze went to Mercer first. "Commander," he said. Mercer stood not out of deference, but out of habit. "Agent," he replied. The younger man set the evidence bag on the table with care and stepped back. He watched Lena not with suspicion but with alert focus, as if he was trying to decide whether she was a witness or a target. The older agent's eyes moved to Lena. "Miss Ward," he said. Lena's breath caught. She had not given Mercer her last name in the secure room. She had not introduced herself to anyone at the gate beyond answering the officer's question. Yet the agent spoke her name like it was already in a file. Mercer watched her reaction and did not explain. He simply gestured for the agent to sit. The older agent took the chair opposite Lena, the younger agent remaining near the door. "We have him in holding." The older agent said to Mercer, "He is demanding counsel. He is also insisting the nurse is mentally unstable, that she stole records, that this is defamation." Mercer's expression did not change. "Let him insist," he said. The older agent nodded and turned back to Lena. "I am Special Agent Daniel Rourke," he said. "Naval Criminal Investigative Service." Lena's mouth went dry. She had heard NCIS on television and jokes in passing. In real life, it sounded different. Heavier. The younger agent spoke next, voice clipped. "Evan Pierce, NCIS," he said. Then fell silent again, eyes still scanning. Rourke leaned forward slightly. "Miss Ward," he said, "did the hospital contact you about the flight, or did Mr. Wexler?" "Wexler," Lena said. Rourke nodded and glanced at the phone on the table. Mercer had left it where it was screen dark like a weapon safely placed but still loaded. "Commander Mercer tells us you signaled him at the gate," Rourke said. "A tactical signal." Lena's pulse jumped. The question was careful, but she felt the edge beneath it. In this room, her signal was not just a plea. It was a marker, a fingerprint from another life. "Where did you learn it?" Rourke asked. Lena looked at Mercer. His gaze stayed steady, not demanding, not leading, simply present. She could lie. She could say a relative taught her, that she saw it online, that she copied it from a movie. She could try to keep her past buried where it had been sealed for years. But lying in this room felt like stepping into soft ground. One wrong move and everything would sink. "Afghanistan," she said. The younger agent by the door stiffened visibly. His eyes snapped to her, then away, as if the word had hit something personal. Rourke's face did not show surprise, but his posture tightened. He glanced at Mercer, then back to Lena. "You were deployed," Rourke said. Lena's fingers curled on the edge of the table. "Not as a nurse," she said, "not like this." Mercer's voice was quiet. "Unit." The word sat between them. It was not just a question. It was a door. Lena swallowed. The brace dug into her throat. Saying it out loud felt like pulling a pin on something she had kept locked down for a long time. "Task Force Black River," she said. "Pierce." The younger agent inhaled sharply like someone had been punched. Rourke's eyes held steady on Lena. and in that steadiness she saw recognition. Combat medic, Lena added, because the truth did not stop politely once it started. I was a combat medic. The clock ticked. The room felt even smaller. Rourke leaned back slowly. Listed KIA, he said the words flat as if reading from a line of a report he had seen too many times. Lena gave a small nod. That was intentional. Pierce's jaw worked as if he was trying to keep his reaction controlled. Rourke's gaze remained fixed on Lena. Why, he asked, would someone list you killed in action if you were not? Lena's lips parted, then closed. She felt the old instinct to shut down. Some truths invited more danger than comfort. Mercer spoke instead, not answering, but redirecting. "That can wait," he said. "We have a civilian case in front of us." Rourke's eyes flicked to Mercer, then returned to Lena. He seemed to accept the boundary, but his focus did not soften. "Ms. Ward," Rourke said, "do you understand what it means that Mr. Wexler followed you to the airport?" Lena held his gaze. "He wanted my phone," she said. "He wanted what I have." Rourke nodded. "And you believe those records implicate him," he said. "They do," Lena said, and then forced herself to add detail. Medication logs changed. Orders placed under the wrong names. Patients pushed out too early. Drugs going missing on paper. Mercer picked up the phone again. He tapped through the images with quick familiarity now, as if his eyes had already memorized the structure. He stopped on a cabinet access log and turned the phone slightly toward Rourke. "Look at the timestamps," Mercer said. Rourke leaned in, and his eyes narrowed. He looked at another image, then another, then leaned back. "This matches what we have been tracking," Rourke said quietly. Lena felt her pulse spike. Tracking. The word meant this was not random. It meant she had not stumbled into the only dark corner of a single hospital. It meant the corner had edges that stretched far beyond Harbor Line's walls. Mercer watched her reaction again, then spoke gently enough to feel almost human. "You did the right thing collecting this," he said. "You did it the way you did because you knew the system would try to erase you." Lena's throat tightened. She wanted to say she did not feel brave. She wanted to say she felt like she was drowning. Instead, she said, "He told security I was unstable." Rourke nodded. "That is a common tactic," he said. "Discredit the witness. Control the narrative. Make the victim look like the threat." Lena's hands trembled slightly, and she forced them still by pressing her palms flat to the table. Mercer's gaze dropped briefly to her wrist, then back to her face. "Who wrapped that?" he asked. "Urgent care," Lena said. The doctor did not ask many questions. Mercer's jaw tightened. He leaned forward, slightly lowering his voice. "Lena," he said, "did you tell anyone at the hospital you had this evidence?" Lena shook her head. "I asked about discrepancies. I tried to file a report. HR called it instability. Then my badge stopped working." Rourke's eyes hardened. "They tried to isolate you," he said. "They did isolate me," Lena replied, and the admission came out sharper than she meant. She took a breath and softened it. "I had no one." Mercer's expression shifted subtly. "Not anymore," he said. The words hit Lena harder than she expected. Not because they were dramatic, but because they were quiet and absolute. Rourke cleared his throat. "Ms. Ward," he said, "we need to secure your device properly. Chain of custody matters." Lena stared at the phone. It was the thing that had kept her alive and the thing that had almost gotten her erased. Handing it over felt like letting go of a lifeline. She looked at Mercer, and he nodded once. Rourke reached into his pocket and produced a small evidence label. Pierce pulled a form from his bag neat and prepared and placed it on the table. "We can image the phone," Rourke said, "and preserve the data without keeping you separated from it. You will sign for the transfer. You will get a receipt. Nothing gets lost in a drawer." Lena's chest eased slightly, just a fraction. She pushed the phone closer. "Do it," she said. Pierce's hands moved quickly, attaching the label writing in block letters. Lena watched his pen strokes. She watched how he avoided smearing ink, how he handled the phone with gloves, how he sealed the evidence bag without theatrics. Procedure could be a kind of protection when it was honest. When it was done, Pierce looked at Mercer. He wants to speak with his attorney, Pierce said. He is also making noise about federal privacy violations. Mercer's mouth tightened. Let him make noise, Mercer said. Noise does not change facts. Rourke glanced at Lena. Ms. Ward, he said, Mr. Wexler has accused you of unauthorized access. That is not a small allegation. Lena lifted her chin. I accessed what I needed to document patient safety issues, she said. I did not distribute patient identities. I did not sell anything. I documented wrongdoing. Rourke held her gaze. Intent matters, he said. Method matters, too. We will need to be very precise. Lena's jaw clenched. Be precise, she said. I have been precise. Mercer's eyes flicked to the evidence bag. He looked back at Lena. When he demanded your phone at the gate, Mercer said he did it in public. That means he was desperate. He tried in the parking garage first, Lena said, then felt her voice tighten. He hurt me there. Rourke's expression did not soften, but it changed. A small shift like a line being drawn. Did you report the assault? Rourke asked. Lena let out a humorless breath. To who, she said. HR. The police, the hospital. They already decided I am unstable. Mercer leaned forward slightly. You recorded his voice, Mercer said. Lena nodded. He did not say he assaulted me on that recording. He said he could make me disappear. Mercer's gaze went cold. That is still a threat, he said. Rourke tapped the table, once thinking. We can interview him, he said. We can also request hospital records and audit trails. But he is a CEO. He knows how to hide behind committees and attorneys. Lena's nails dug into her palms. He will bury it, she said. He will say the logs were errors. He will say I hacked them. He will say I am lying. Mercer's voice remained low. He will try, Mercer said. That is why we do not argue with him. We let him talk. Lena's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Mercer held her gaze calm and steady. People like him believe their own story is bulletproof, Mercer said. They believe the room belongs to them. They believe the person in scrubs will fold first. He paused. We use that? Rourke nodded once, as if Mercer had spoken a plan they had used before. Pierce's eyes sharpened. He looked at Mercer, then at Lena. Lena felt the air in her lungs catch. She did not like games. She did not like manipulation. But she understood strategy. She understood that sometimes the fastest way to truth was not through force, but through allowing arrogance to step too far. Mercer stood. He moved to the door and looked through the window. The airport police officers outside shifted subtly attentive. Mercer opened the door a crack and spoke low to someone in the hallway. Lena could not hear the words, but she saw the effect. The officer nodded and moved away with purpose. Mercer closed the door again and returned to the table. Rourke's gaze returned to Lena's face. Ms. Ward, he said, I need to ask you one more question about your background. Task Force Black River is not a name people stumble into. If you were listed killed in action, that means someone wanted you erased. Lena's throat tightened. It means someone wanted me gone, she said, and felt the echo of Wexler's whisper at the gate. Mercer watched her with something that looked like anger, directed at the universe, not at her. How long have you been working as a nurse? He asked. Lena blinked. 3 years, she said, since I got out. Since you disappeared, Rourke corrected quietly. Lena's jaw clenched. I did not disappear, she said. I just stopped existing on paper. Pierce spoke from near the door, his voice rougher than before. Black River did not just vanish, he said. People died. The words hung in the air. Lena felt heat rise behind her eyes, sharp and unwanted. I know, she said. Pierce looked at her, and for a split second his professional mask slipped enough that Lena saw something underneath. Not suspicion. Something like pain, quickly hidden again. Rourke held up a hand, slightly calming. We can discuss that later, he said, his tone careful. Right now, we focus on Mr. Wexler. Mercer nodded, agreed. Lena's heart hammered. She wanted to ask why Mercer was here, why a SEAL commander was standing between her and a hospital CEO in an airport. She wanted to ask how Rourke knew her name. She wanted to ask what line connected Harbor Line's altered logs to federal attention. But she also understood timing. Questions could come. Survival came first. The door opened again, and an airport police sergeant stepped in. He was older, with a weathered face and eyes that had seen too much. He nodded at Mercer, then at Rourke. "We have the subject secured," the sergeant said. "He is agitated. He is also insisting on speaking to the media liaison." Rourke's mouth tightened, noted, he said. The sergeant glanced at Lena, then softened his tone. "Ma'am," he said, "are you safe to remain here?" Lena swallowed. She did not feel safe anywhere. But she felt safer than she had at the gate. "Yes," she said. The sergeant nodded and stepped out again. Mercer returned to the table and looked at Lena as if measuring her. He spoke quietly, his voice stripped of everything but intent. "Lena," he said, "when you go into a room with a man like Wexler, you cannot fight him the way he expects. If you come in angry, he will feed on it. If you accuse him directly, he will shut down and let his attorney speak. If you plead, he will enjoy it." Lena's spine went rigid. Her instincts flared old and sharp. She remembered dealing with people in villages who smiled while hiding weapons. She remembered that sometimes the most dangerous men did not shout. They smiled. Mercer's eyes held hers. "You do not threaten him," Mercer said. Lena frowned. "Then what?" "You make him comfortable," Mercer replied. The words should have sounded wrong. In another context they would have. Here they landed with cold logic. Rourke nodded slowly. "We can set conditions," he said. "We can ensure the recording is lawful. We can make sure he is aware he is being recorded or that the environment meets the requirements. We can do it clean." Lena stared at them. A part of her wanted to refuse. She wanted to stay out of it, to sit in a corner and let professionals do their work. Another part of her knew Wexler's mind. She knew his arrogance. She knew the way he liked to lecture. She knew he could not resist the chance to reassert dominance over her, and she knew he would not talk the same way to anyone else in the room. Lena's voice came out quieter. "He called patients assets," she said. He said it like it was normal. Mercer's jaw tightened. "That word matters," he said. Rourke's eyes narrowed. "It suggests dehumanization," he said. "It suggests a transactional mindset. It suggests more than narcotics diversion." Lena felt the brace bite again as she swallowed. In the hospital, she said there was a list. Black stars next to certain names. Rourke's gaze sharpened. How many names? Lena hesitated, searching memory. 6 that I saw, she said. Maybe more. Rourke glanced at Pierce. Pierce's eyes met his, and a silent conversation passed between them. Mercer stood again. He moved to the door and spoke to someone outside. This time Lena caught a few words low and controlled. "Hold him," Mercer said. "Keep him isolated. No calls." He closed the door, and when he returned his eyes went back to Lena. "You are injured," he said. "You are exhausted. You have been gaslit and cornered and labeled unstable." He paused, then lowered his voice further. "None of that changes what you are capable of." Lena's throat tightened. Capable of what? Mercer's gaze did not waver. Telling the truth without flinching, he said. The room felt too quiet again. Lena could hear the tick of the clock. She could hear the faint hum of the building's ventilation. She could hear her own heartbeat. Rourke pushed a pen and a form toward Lena. "We need a statement," he said. "Basic facts. Your employment, your concerns, the assault, the attempted seizure of your phone at the gate." Lena picked up the pen. Her wrist protested pain shooting up her forearm, but she wrote anyway. She wrote in short, precise sentences the way she charted because charting had trained her for this. Time, place, behavior, words spoken, injuries observed. When she finished, she slid the paper back. Rourke scanned it quickly. His expression stayed controlled, but something in his eyes approved. "You are not unstable," Rourke said quietly. Lena's throat tightened. Hearing it said aloud felt strange, like someone naming daylight after too long in a basement. Mercer looked at the evidence bag again. He set his hand on it briefly, not possessive, more like acknowledging what it represented. "This is enough to hold him," Mercer said. But holding is not the same as ending. Lena's gaze snapped to him. She did not like the sound of that. Holding meant temporary. Wexler had money. Wexler had lawyers. Wexler had a board that worshipped metrics. Mercer seemed to read her fear. His voice remained calm. "He believes you are isolated," Mercer said. "He believes you are terrified. He believes you will fold if he pushes the right pressure point. That belief makes people reckless." Lena's hands curled into fists. "I am terrified," she admitted. Mercer nodded once. "Good," he said. "That means you are still human." Pierce shifted near the door, his voice low. "He is asking about the phone," he said. "He is demanding we return it because it contains confidential records." Rourke's gaze turned sharp. "He can demand whatever he wants," Rourke said. Mercer's eyes remained on Lena. "Are you ready to face him?" he asked. Lena's stomach dropped. She pictured Wexler's face in the garage, close enough to smell his cologne over concrete dust. She pictured his hand crushing her wrist the way he had not even looked angry, just inconvenienced. She pictured him at the gate, smiling as he called her unstable. She forced herself to breathe slowly. She was not ready. But readiness had never been a guarantee in any place she had survived. "Yes," she said, and heard the steadiness in her own voice with a kind of disbelief. Mercer nodded, as if that answer was all he needed. Rourke stood gathering the forms, checking the evidence seal again. Pierce opened the door and looked down the hallway. The airport police officers outside straightened alert, their faces professional. Mercer stepped closer to Lena, not invading, but close enough that she could hear him without anyone else. In there, he said quietly, "You do not take his bait. You do not argue his narrative. You do not try to convince him you are sane. You already are. He will try to make you small. Do not give him that." Lena's throat tightened, but she nodded. Mercer held her gaze a moment longer, then stepped back and opened the door for her. The hallway outside smelled like carpet cleaner and distant rain. The noise of the terminal was muted here, as if the airport had built this corridor to hide inconvenient truths. Lena stepped out, the brace stiff against her skin, her wrist throbbing, her body heavy with exhaustion. Ahead, at the end of the corridor, a door with a reinforced window waited. Through the glass, she could see a slice of a room and the edge of a suit sleeve. Wexler was inside, sitting like he owned the space, waiting like he still believed he could rewrite reality. Lena walked toward the door, her steps steady, even as her stomach twisted, and Mercer moved with her close enough to feel like a wall at her shoulder. The reinforced door opened with a soft click, and the smell inside the holding room hit Lena first. Stale air. Old coffee. The faint metallic tang of sweat that never fully leaves spaces where people sit and wait for consequences. Graham Wexler looked up as she stepped in, and his smile arrived right on time, polished and effortless, as if he were greeting her in his office and not sitting in handcuffs at a scarred table. He did not look rattled, he looked offended. Lena kept her shoulders square, the neck brace pressed into her jaw. Her wrist throbbed in waves that matched her pulse. She did not sit. She stood across from him and let the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable. Wexler filled it with a soft chuckle. "Look at you," he said, still performing. Lena's mouth went dry, but her voice came out steady. "You called me a mental patient in front of everyone." Wexler shrugged like they were discussing weather. "You are unstable. You accessed records without authorization. You fabricated narratives. You assaulted staff." Lena watched his eyes while he spoke. She watched the tiny movements at the corners, the way he checked her face for flinches, for anger, for tears. He wanted reaction. He wanted proof that she was exactly what he had said she was. She gave him none. Outside the room, through the reinforced window, she could see the faint reflection of Commander Mercer standing in the hallway. His face was still. His posture was calm. His presence felt like a wall that did not need to be announced. Lena let Wexler's words sit in the air. Then she spoke again evenly. "You followed me to the airport." Wexler's smile sharpened, pleased at the change in topic. "Of course I did," he said. "I am responsible for the people who work for me." "Not anymore," Lena said. Wexler leaned back in his chair cuffs, clinking softly. "A technicality. You were terminated, but you were still a liability." Lena kept her gaze on him. "Why?" His eyes narrowed slightly, as if he did not like being asked questions in a room where he could not control the lighting. Then his arrogance pushed through the irritation. He could not resist the chance to lecture. "Because you took something that does not belong to you," he said. "And you do not get to walk away with it." Lena did not move. She let the sentence hang there, a clean shape in the air. She heard it for what it was. Not a denial, not a defense, a claim. Wexler continued, because he liked the sound of his own certainty. "You think you are doing something noble," he said. "You think you are protecting patients. But you are a nurse. You are replaceable. The system replaces you by lunch." Lena's fingers curled slightly at her sides. She forced them to relax. "If I am replaceable," she said, "why did you come?" Wexler's smile widened, and for a moment it looked almost genuine. "Because you do not understand consequences," he said. "Because you do not know who you are dealing with." Lena tilted her head a fraction, the brace limiting how far she could move. She let her voice soften just enough to make him feel like he had regained control. "Then tell me," she said, "who am I dealing with?" Wexler's eyes glittered with contempt and with something else. Pride. The kind that comes from believing you have built a world where rules bend for you. "This is not a hospital problem," he said. "This is contracts, networks, numbers that keep this place alive. You think the board cares about your feelings. They care about metrics. They care about outcomes. They care about funding." Lena's stomach tightened. She pictured the list with black stars. She pictured early discharge orders appearing like ghosts. "Patience," she said quietly. Wexler laughed, a short sound that carried no warmth. "Assets," he corrected. The word landed hard. Lena felt her throat tighten, but she held her face neutral. She let him see nothing but calm. Outside the window, Mercer's jaw tightened just slightly. Lena took one slow breath. "How many?" she asked. Wexler's smile thinned. "How many what?" Lena stepped closer by a small distance, not enough to look aggressive, just enough to look involved. The way a nurse steps closer when a patient whispers something important. "How many people were discharged early because someone needed the numbers to look good?" she asked. "How many did not make it because care got cut short?" Wexler stared at her, and Lena saw the decision flicker behind his eyes. He could deny. He could call her crazy. He could shut down and wait for his lawyer. Instead, his pride chose another path. He leaned forward, hands cuffed elbows on the table. "That is the beauty of it," he said softly. "Nobody can prove anything." Lena's chest went tight, but she did not react. She held the silence again. Wexler filled it, intoxicated by his own control. "Look at you," he murmured. "You came in here thinking you were going to play hero. You are still just a woman in scrubs with a phone and a fantasy." Lena's voice stayed low. "You were scared of my phone." Wexler's eyes flicked quick and sharp. He recovered immediately, but the moment was there, like a hand slipping on glass. "I am not scared," he said. "I am responsible." Lena nodded slowly as if she accepted his answer. "Responsible. That is why you shoved me in the garage." Wexler's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then returned. "You fell," he said. "You were hysterical. You charged at me." Lena's breath came slow and measured. "Say that again," she said. Wexler frowned. "What?" "The part about the garage," Lena said. "Say it again." Wexler's eyes narrowed. He studied her now, trying to figure out why she was pushing there. His suspicion rose like a tide. Lena let him feel it, then eased it back down by softening her face, the smallest suggestion of defeat. "I do not have proof," she said quietly. "Maybe you are right. Maybe nobody can prove anything." Wexler's posture loosened. His smile returned with satisfied cruelty. "Exactly," he said. Lena looked down briefly as if gathering herself. Then she lifted her eyes again. "But you know what I do have," she said. "A bruised wrist, a neck injury, and your words." Wexler's smile sharpened. "You do not have my words," he said. "You have your delusions." Lena took one step back, creating space, making herself smaller in a way that made him relax. She let her shoulders drop slightly, like surrender. She kept her voice soft. "I want to understand," she said. "Why the garage? Why the airport? Why not just fire me and move on?" Wexler leaned forward again, drawn to the question like a man drawn to a mirror. "Because you would not shut up," he said. "Because you could not accept your place." Lena's pulse hammered. She held herself still. "My place," she repeated. Wexler's eyes hardened. "You are a nurse," he said. "You are hired help. You do what you are told. You do not snoop. You do not document. You do not take pictures of internal systems like you are some kind of investigator." Lena's voice stayed quiet. "And when I did," Wexler's mouth curled. "I put you on the concrete in that garage because you would not shut your mouth," he said. "I grabbed your wrist. I shoved you back. You learned a lesson." The words dropped into the room and sat there heavy and undeniable. For a beat, Lena did nothing. She did not nod. She did not glare. She did not let relief change her breathing. She simply held his gaze calm as a monitor line. Wexler watched her confusion creeping in. He had expected tears. He had expected a scream. He had expected something he could label unstable. Instead, Lena turned slightly toward the door. Wexler's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" Lena did not answer him. She opened the door. The hallway beyond was filled with quiet, controlled motion. Commander Mercer stood a few feet away with Agent Rourke and Agent Pierce. An airport police officer held a small recording device in his hand, already running. Lena stepped out and closed the door behind her gently, like leaving a patient room at night. Mercer's voice was low. "That is sufficient," he said. Rourke glanced at the device, then nodded once. "Captured," he said. Inside the holding room, Wexler's chair scraped suddenly. He surged to his feet, cuffed hands slamming the table. "You cannot do this," he shouted, his voice muffled by the door but loud enough to echo. "This is entrapment. I have attorneys. I have connections. I will destroy you." Mercer opened the door slowly and stepped inside with Rourke just behind him. Pierce remained in the hallway with the officer's eyes fixed on the scene. Wexler's face was flushed now, his composure cracking into fury. He pointed his cuffed hands at Lena as if she were the criminal. "She is lying," he snapped. "She stole confidential records. She is unstable. She attacked staff." Mercer did not raise his voice. He did not argue. He looked at Wexler as if looking at a man who had just stepped into a spotlight he did not understand. "You assaulted her," Mercer said quietly. "You threatened her. You attempted to seize evidence in a public terminal." Wexler's laugh burst out sharp and false. "Evidence? You think this is evidence? This is a disgruntled employee with a phone. You are making a mistake." Rourke stepped forward, his tone even. "Mr. Wexler," he said, "you are under investigation. You will cooperate." Wexler's eyes snapped to Rourke, then widened slightly as the acronym and the posture and the calm authority settled into recognition. "Who are you?" he demanded. Rourke did not answer immediately. He reached into his jacket and showed his credentials in a smooth motion. "Naval Criminal Investigative Service," Rourke said. Wexler's throat worked. "This is a hospital," he said. "This is not your jurisdiction." Mercer's eyes stayed cold. "It is when it stops being a hospital problem," Mercer replied. Wexler's gaze darted to Lena, and Lena saw something behind his anger now. Not fear of being embarrassed, fear of losing control. "You think you are safe," Wexler hissed at her. "You think you are going to walk out of here with your little story and ruin me. You have no idea what you have done." Lena did not flinch. Her voice came out low and steady. You followed me to the airport because you were afraid of what I had, she said. You shoved me because I would not give it to you. You called me unstable because you needed everyone to believe you. Wexler's face twisted. You are nothing, he spat. Mercer took a step closer, and the air in the room changed. Wexler's eyes flicked to him, and for the first time the billionaire confidence faltered into something smaller. You made a mistake, Mercer said. The moment you assumed a nurse could not destroy you. Wexler's lips parted, searching for a weapon. He found the one he always used. He lifted his chin. I want my lawyer, he said. You will get counsel, Rourke replied. After we process you. Process, Wexler repeated, as if the word offended him. You cannot process me. I am a respected executive. I sit on boards. I fund charities. Mercer's gaze did not move. You are a man in handcuffs who just confessed to assault, he said. Wexler's eyes snapped toward Lena again. He tried another angle, softer now, dangerous because of how reasonable it sounded. Lena, he said, listen to me. You are sick. You have been through stress. This is not you. You can still fix this. Tell them you misunderstood. Tell them you overreacted. I can get you help. Lena felt a cold wave move through her, the old, familiar gaslighting wrapped in concern. She recognized it the way you recognize a smell you once feared. She did not let it reach her face. I do not need your help, she said. Wexler's smile tightened. You do, he insisted. You have no one. Mercer's voice cut in quiet and final. That is not true. Rourke gestured toward the door. Officers stepped in, calm and efficient, taking hold of Wexler's arm with professional restraint. Wexler resisted at first by stiffening, trying to reclaim dignity through posture. Then he jerked, anger exploding. Get your hands off me, he barked. This is illegal. I will sue this airport. I will sue the hospital. I will sue all of you. The officers guided him toward the door. Wexler's eyes locked onto Lena one last time as he was moved. You think you won, he hissed, voice low enough to feel personal. Lena's chest tightened. She did not answer with triumph. She answered with the only truth that mattered in her throat. I think you got caught, she said. Wexler's face contorted, and then the officers steered him through the doorway and into the hallway, his expensive suit suddenly looking small against the plain institutional walls. Lena stood inside the holding room for a moment after he was gone. The air smelled different now, less like threat, more like aftermath. Her knees trembled. She hated that her body still reacted, even when her mind stayed steady. She pressed her fingertips against the edge of the table until the tremor eased, and then she exhaled slowly, feeling the breath move past the brace, careful and controlled. Mercer stepped closer but did not touch her. He kept his voice low. Are you all right? He asked. Lena's mouth opened, then closed. The truthful answer was complicated. She settled on the simplest thing she could say. I am here, she replied. Rourke spoke in a clipped tone to someone in the hallway, confirming the recording, confirming the chain of custody, confirming transport. Pierce nodded, already moving, already working. The airport police sergeant appeared briefly at the door, eyes scanning, then nodded once and stepped away. Lena's gaze drifted to the reinforced window. Beyond it, the corridor stretched back toward the terminal, toward crowds and boarding calls and rain streaking the glass. The airport felt like a different place now, not because it had changed, but because the story inside it had shifted. Mercer turned, slightly angling his body toward the door, as if preparing to move. Rourke stepped aside to let Lena pass first. Lena walked out into the corridor, her steps slow, controlled. The storm's sound was louder now, rain tapping somewhere overhead, and the air carried the faint electric scent that arrives when weather breaks. The terminal noise rose as they moved closer, blending back into the ordinary world. She did not look back toward the holding room. She kept her eyes forward and followed Mercer down the hallway. The corridor opened back into the terminal like a wound returning to air. Sound rushed in first. Boarding, announcements, rolling luggage, a baby, crying somewhere near the food court, the dull roar of conversation that made everything feel normal. even when it was not. Lena stepped out beside Commander Mercer, her neck brace stiff against her jaw, her bandaged wrist held close to her body. She kept her eyes forward because turning her head hurt, and because she did not want to watch people watch her. Airport police moved ahead in a loose wedge, creating space without shouting. Behind them, Special Agent Rourke walked with a folder tucked under his arm, his pace unhurried. Special Agent Pierce stayed a step back and to the side, his attention scanning the crowd like he was reading threat in the small details. Wexler came last, wrists cuffed in front, suit still immaculate, face tight with controlled rage. 2 officers held his arms lightly, not dragging him, simply denying him the illusion that he could decide where his body went. Passengers stared. Some pretended not to. A few lifted phones, openly now recording. Lena saw a woman near the gate counter whisper to her friend, eyes wide, hand covering her mouth. A man in a hoodie leaned into the aisle between seats to get a better angle. The gate agent who had looked away earlier stood rigid behind the counter, cheeks pale, as if she was trying to rewrite her own memory of what she had seen. Wexler tried to keep his head high, but his eyes kept snapping toward Lena like an animal searching for a last opening. When he spoke, he pitched his voice so the crowd could hear, as if volume could shape reality. "This is an abuse of authority," he said. "She stole medical records. She is unstable. She needs psychiatric care." Rourke did not respond. Mercer did not respond. The airport police did not respond. Silence, Lena realized, was the opposite of Wexler's favorite weapon. It gave him nothing to twist. Wexler tried again, voice sharper now. "You people have no idea what you are doing. I will have your badges. I will have your jobs. I will have this airport sued into the ground." The officers guided him around a family with a stroller. The mother pulled her child closer, eyes wary, as if Wexler might infect the air. Lena felt her stomach churn. The terminal lights were too bright, reflecting off polished tile. Her brace scratched her skin each time she swallowed. She kept moving because stopping felt dangerous, like the ground might shift if she let herself pause. Mercer's voice came low beside her, angled so only she could hear. "Keep your eyes up," he said. "Breathe slow." Lena nodded once. The advice was simple, almost bland, but it steadied her. She focused on the rhythm of her steps, on the pressure of the carpet beneath her boots, on the way the air smelled faintly of rain and jet fuel. They reached a side corridor marked for personnel, and the noise dropped again. The door clicked shut behind them, and the terminal's chaos became muffled, like sound on the other side of water. In the quieter hallway, Wexler's voice sounded louder, harsher, stripped of audience polish. "This is insane," he snapped. "You can't hold me. You can't keep me from calling my counsel." Rourke finally spoke, tone even. "You will be allowed a call when we process you, Mr. Wexler." "Process," Wexler repeated, incredulous. "I am not a criminal." Pierce's gaze flicked to him, and his voice came out flat. "You are in handcuffs." Wexler's eyes flashed. He leaned toward Pierce, trying intimidation. "You are a little federal agent in a cheap suit. Do you know what I can do with one phone call?" Pierce did not blink. "Make it," he said. The officers guided Wexler through another door and down another hallway toward an area Lena could not see. The sound of his shoes faded. His voice faded with them still talking, still trying to build a story that would keep him above consequences. When the last echo of him disappeared, Lena felt something inside her loosen. Not relief exactly. Not safety. More like the end of a constant pressure she had stopped noticing until it lifted. Rourke stopped and turned to Lena. His posture remained professional, but his eyes were less hard now. "Miss Ward," he said, "you are not under arrest. You are a witness." Lena stared at him as if she did not trust her ears. Rourke continued precise. "Your device is being imaged. You will receive documentation. We will coordinate with you regarding statements. You will have access to counsel if you choose. Your medical needs will be addressed." Lena swallowed. Her throat felt raw. And the hospital, she asked. They said I was unstable. They told security I was dangerous. Rourke nodded once. We have your statement and the recorded admission. We also have multiple witnesses from the terminal. Their narrative does not control this anymore. Lena's hands trembled slightly. She curled her fingers into her palm and forced them still. She had spent the last 3 days being told reality belonged to someone else. Hearing a federal agent speak as if reality was solid again felt unreal. Mercer remained beside her silent, letting Rourke handle the procedural edge. When Rourke finished, Mercer spoke with quiet certainty. You did not imagine this, he said. Lena's chest tightened a sudden ache behind her sternum. She looked down, blinking hard, then lifted her gaze again to keep the emotion from spilling where she did not want it. Rourke checked his watch, then glanced down the hall. We will handle transport, he said to Mercer. Commander, we will need your statement as well. Mercer nodded. You will get it. Rourke's attention returned to Lena. A paramedic can evaluate you again, he said. We can also arrange a private ride. Lena opened her mouth to answer, then stopped. The truth was, she did not know what she wanted. She had been pushed from one controlled space to another for days. The idea of deciding anything felt unfamiliar. I just need a minute, she said. Rourke nodded and stepped away, speaking quietly to Pierce near the corner. Their voices dropped into the background, professional and contained. Mercer turned slightly and guided Lena back toward the main terminal, but not to the gate. They walked to the windows overlooking the runway, where the storm had finally broken into steady rain. Water streaked the glass in long lines. On the tarmac ground, crew moved in reflective vests, heads down against the weather. Planes taxied slowly through the wet lights, blinking like distant beacons. Lena stopped near the window and stared out as if the runway could answer questions she could not yet form. Mercer stood a step to her side, not crowding her. His presence was calm, controlled, the kind that did not demand anything from her. Lena let the silence stretch. She could hear her own breathing now. She could hear the small click of rain against glass. She could hear the airport's distant announcements softened by distance. Finally, she spoke, voice low. Why were you there? She asked. Mercer did not answer immediately. He watched the runway for a moment, as if considering which parts of truth were safe to place in the open. I was flying through, he said. Lena's eyes narrowed slightly. She could hear the carefulness in his tone. She could also hear that he was not lying, not exactly. He was choosing the smallest true statement. He added, quieter, when you signaled, I recognized it. Lena's jaw tightened. That still did not explain why a SEAL commander moved like he had been waiting for a trigger. Mercer's gaze remained on the rain. Some patterns are hard to ignore, he said. Lena's throat tightened again. She looked down at her bandaged wrist. He hurt people, she said, voice barely above the hum of the terminal. Not just me. Patience. Mercer nodded once. I know. The simplicity of it hit her. I know, not I believe you, not I suspect. I know. Lena turned her eyes toward him. How? Mercer's face did not change much, but his eyes carried fatigue that looked older than him. There are investigations that start long before a whistleblower steps forward, he said. Sometimes the missing piece is not a document. It is a person willing to say it out loud. Lena felt her stomach twist. And I was that person. Mercer's gaze shifted to her. You were that person, he confirmed. Lena tried to swallow, but the brace made the motion uncomfortable. She winced slightly, and Mercer noticed. Sit, he said. There was a row of seats near the windows, empty except for a forgotten magazine. Lena lowered herself carefully onto one, keeping her injured wrist close. The seat's vinyl was cold. Mercer remained standing for a moment, scanning the area, then sat one seat away, angled slightly so he could watch both Lena and the flow of people behind them. His habit of protecting space was constant, not dramatic, just built into him. Lena's voice came out smaller than she intended. I almost got on that plane, she admitted. Mercer looked at the runway again. That is what he wanted. Lena's fingers tightened on her sleeve. I kept thinking maybe it would be easier, she said. Just disappear. Start over somewhere no one knew my name. Mercer's tone stayed calm. Easier is not always safer. Lena stared at the rain. The storm blurred the outlines of planes and lights into gray smears. She thought about the itinerary in her inbox labeled departure. She thought about how Wexler had said vanished like he was describing a simple administrative task. "I do not know what happens to me now," she said. Mercer turned his head slightly, meeting her eyes. "Right now, you breathe," he said. "You let your body catch up to the fact that you are no longer trapped in his story." Lena felt her throat tighten again. The word story made her flinch. She had lived inside his narrative like a cage. Mercer continued steady. "The federal agents will do what they do. Your evidence will be preserved. Your statement will stand. You will not be alone in it. Not alone." The phrase sounded good, but it also felt unfamiliar, like shoes that did not fit yet. Lena looked down at her hands. Her nails were bitten short, an old habit she thought she had broken. Her wrist ached beneath the gauze. Her neck felt stiff, her muscles tight with held fear. She spoke again quietly. "He said nobody cares about nurses." Mercer's mouth tightened. "He likes saying things that make people smaller," Mercer said. Lena's eyes burned. "It worked," she whispered. Mercer turned toward her fully now. "It worked until it did not," he said. She nodded once, swallowing hard. For a while, they sat in silence. People passed behind them, glancing, then looking away. Some recognized the uniforms in the distance and moved faster. The airport kept functioning indifferent to private wars unfolding in its corners. Lena's eyes drifted back to the gate area in the far distance. She could not see Gate 17 from here, but she could picture it. The boarding door, the rows of seats, the place where she had stood while Wexler whispered about erasing her. "That plane is probably boarding," she said softly. Mercer did not look at the departure boards. "It does not matter," he replied. Lena let the words settle. For days the flight had felt like fate. Now it felt like a prop in someone else's plan. Her pocket felt strangely light without her phone. The absence made her uneasy, like missing a limb. She looked at Mercer. "You will give it back?" she asked, then corrected herself. "They will." Mercer nodded. "You will get it back after imaging," he said. "You will have documentation." Lena's breath came out slowly. She stared at her hands again. She felt an urge to speak, to fill the silence with something, anything, because silence invited thoughts. Thoughts invited memory. Afghanistan, the agent had asked. Task Force Black River. Listed, killed in action. The past pressed at the edge of her mind like a door that never fully shut. Mercer seemed to sense it. He did not ask. He did not pry. He simply sat with her in the quiet, letting the air be what it was. Then her phone buzzed. It was not in her pocket because it was gone, sealed in an evidence bag. The vibration came from Mercer's jacket instead. He reached in, pulled out a phone that looked like it had seen sand and rain, glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted. "It is for you," he said. Lena stared at the device. She did not move. Mercer held it out, and she took it with her good hand. The phone felt heavy foreign, its surface cool. She pressed it to her ear. "Hello," she said. A calm, authoritative voice filled the line. Lena Ward. Her stomach dropped. She recognized command in the cadence the way some voices carried power without volume. "This is Admiral Everett Shaw," the voice said. Lena's pulse surged. Her breath caught in her throat. "Sir," she managed. Mercer's posture straightened subtly, not stiff with fear, but with recognition. The air around him seemed to tighten into attention. "You have been difficult to locate," the Admiral said. Lena swallowed, wincing at the brace. "Yes, sir." The Admiral's tone did not carry anger. It carried something else. A controlled relief that sounded almost like disappointment had been waiting a long time and finally released. "Your father would have been proud," the Admiral said. The sentence hit Lena harder than any threat Wexler had made. Her eyes burned instantly. She blinked and looked down at her bandaged wrist, as if staring at something physical could keep her from breaking in public. "Sir," she whispered again, but her voice shook. The Admiral paused for a beat, letting the words settle. Then his voice remained steady, almost gentle in its firmness. "We are bringing you in," he said. Lena's grip tightened on the phone. "Bringing me in," she repeated, careful. "Not as a nurse," the Admiral replied. "Not as a witness." Lena's throat tightened. Then as what? The answer came without drama, but it unlocked something in her chest that had been sealed for years. "As family," the Admiral said, "and as protected." Lena closed her eyes. The airport noise swelled, then faded, as if sound could not decide whether it belonged in this moment. She felt her shoulders shake slightly. She forced them still. "Yes, sir," she said, because she did not know what else to say. Mercer watched her face steady, silent. The Admiral continued precise. "Commander Mercer will coordinate immediate logistics. You will receive medical evaluation. You will be kept secure. You will not be left exposed." Lena's mouth went dry. "Understood, sir." The call ended. Lena lowered the phone slowly. Her hands trembled. She stared at the dark screen as if it might explain what had just happened. Mercer's voice came low. "Are you all right?" Lena swallowed. She looked up at him. He had not asked why the Admiral knew her father. He had not asked why the Admiral's words sounded like an old file being reopened. He waited, letting her decide what to give. "I have not heard anyone say my father's name in years," she said. Mercer nodded once, as if he understood more than he would say. He held out his hand, palm up. Lena handed him the phone. Mercer glanced at the screen, then tucked it away. Rourke approached from down the corridor, his expression focused. He stopped a respectful distance away, eyes flicking briefly to Lena's injuries, then to Mercer. "Commander," he said, "transport is ready when you are. We also have her documentation prepared." Mercer nodded. "Good." Rourke looked at Lena. "Ms. Ward," he said, "we will need you to sign a final receipt for the device imaging and a brief supplemental statement confirming the threat at the gate and the attempted seizure of your phone." Lena's voice was quiet. "I will sign." Rourke nodded and motioned down a side corridor. "We have a private room nearby," he said. Lena stood carefully. Her knees felt weak, not from pain, but from the sudden release of tension. Mercer moved with her close enough that if she stumbled, he could catch her without making it look like he was catching her. She appreciated that. She hated needing help, but she hated being watched, needing help more. They walked into a small office that looked like it belonged to airport management. Beige walls, a filing cabinet, a framed photo of an airplane on a runway, as if anyone needed reminding where they were. A desk lamp cast a warm circle of light that made the room feel smaller and safer. Rourke set paperwork on the desk. Pierce stood near the door, posture quiet, eyes still scanning. The two airport police officers remained outside in the hall, visible through the small window. Lena signed where indicated. Her wrist protested pain flashing, but she wrote anyway. Each signature felt like reclaiming something. Not triumph, just confirmation that she existed on paper again, not as a diagnosis, not as a problem, but as a person with a statement. Rourke collected the documents with care. "Thank you," he said. "A medical team is on standby to evaluate you again. We will also coordinate contact information for a victim advocate if you want one." Lena's eyes flicked up. Victim advocate. Rourke's tone remained neutral. "Someone to help you navigate next steps," he said. "It is your choice." Lena nodded once. Choice. The word tasted unfamiliar. Rourke stepped toward the door, then paused. "Ms. Ward," he said, "you did well keeping your composure at the gate. That mattered." Lena's throat tightened. She gave a small nod, unable to speak for a moment. Rourke left the room. Pierce lingered a beat longer, then followed, closing the door gently behind him. For the first time in days, Lena was alone in a room where no one was trying to label her. The silence hit like a wave. Her body remembered everything at once. The shove in the garage, the concrete against her shoulder, Wexler's grip crushing her wrist, the way HR had smiled while calling her unstable, the way the airport crowd had watched, the way she had signaled with 2 fingers because she could not speak the truth out loud. Her breath shuddered. She sat on the edge of the chair by the desk and pressed her good hand to her forehead. Tears came without permission. silent, shaking, exhausted. Not dramatic, not loud, just a release she could not stop. Her shoulders trembled, her neck ached, her wrist throbbed. She cried the way someone cries when they have been holding their breath for too long and finally realize they are allowed to inhale. A soft sound came from the other side of the door. Not a knock, just a shift. Lena wiped her face quickly, embarrassed by the instinct to hide. She took a breath and let it out slowly. The door opened a few inches. Mercer stood there, not stepping in, not filling the room, just present in the doorway like a sentry who knew the difference between protection and intrusion. He did not ask if she was crying. He did not tell her to be strong. He simply looked at her with calm eyes. "You did good," he said. Lena swallowed and wiped her cheek again. Her voice came out rough. "I almost ran." Mercer nodded. "And you still came back," he said. Lena stared at the desk lamp's warm circle of light blinking hard. "I do not feel brave," she admitted. Mercer's voice stayed steady. "Bravery is not a feeling," he said. Lena let out a small, broken breath that might have been a laugh if it had not been so tired. She shook her head slightly, then winced at the brace. Mercer noticed immediately. He stepped in just far enough to lower his voice. "They will have medical look at you again," he said. "Proper imaging. Not a rushed, urgent care discharge." Lena nodded once. Mercer's gaze held hers. "You are not leaving this airport alone," he added. Lena's chest tightened again. The words could have sounded like a threat, but coming from him they sounded like structure, like a boundary drawn in a world that had been sliding. She looked down at her bandaged wrist. For days she had lived inside fear that no one would believe her. Now she felt something else under the fear. Not safety, not yet, but connection. The knowledge that her voice had landed somewhere it could not be easily erased. Outside the office, the airport continued its ordinary rhythm. Flights boarded, coffee brewed. Announcements called names and numbers and gates. The storm pressed rain against glass and turned the runway lights into blurred stars. Inside, Lena took one long, careful breath, and for the first time since the parking garage, her lungs expanded fully. Mercer remained in the doorway, calm and silent, holding space, as if that too was part of the job.